In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. O glorious Prince, Saint Michael, chief and commander of the heavenly hosts, guardian of souls, vanquisher of rebel spirits, servant in the house of the divine King and our admirable conductor, you who shine with excellence and superhuman virtue, deliver us from evil, who turn to you with confidence and enable us by your gracious protection to serve God more and more faithfully every day. Pray for us, O glorious Saint Michael, Prince of the Church of Jesus Christ, that we may be made worthy of his promises. Almighty and everlasting God, who, by a prodigy of goodness and a merciful desire for the salvation of all men, has appointed the most glorious Archangel Saint Michael, Prince of your church, make us worthy, we ask you, to be delivered from all our enemies, that none of them may harass us at the hour of our death, but that we may be conducted by him into your presence. This we ask through the merits of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. I'm going to start something different. I'm behind, way behind on viewer mail. I'm going to get to at least one of them tonight. And it's from Karen. And Karen wants to know, Reverend Sean, I'm shopping around for a nice wall crucifix. What do you recommend? There are no bad crucifixes. I was admiring one the other night that I have on a wall in one of my other bedrooms that I glued together with two popsicle sticks once and thumbtacked it to the wall above the bed of a child that was under extreme demonic oppression one time on a case I worked. And I just recently heard from them, and where that cross was, the mark is still on the wall there. So there's no such thing as a bad wall crucifix. If you need to make one, you make one and you get it up on your wall. I have probably a couple dozen different types of wall crucifixes throughout my home. Some were gifts, some I purchased, some are religious relics. But if you put my feet to the fire and made me have to recommend one, then I would recommend you get yourself a really nice St. Benedict crucifix. And what makes it a St. Benedict crucifix is behind Jesus on the cross is the St. Benedict medallion. This one was made at the Vatican, blessed by the Pope. I'm a little fanatical about that. I tend to get everything from the Vatican, including religious medals by the bagload, because I give a lot of them out. They're silver, made at the Vatican, blessed by the Pope. But here's your St. Benedict medallion. And it's all engraved in Latin, and the backside with the cross on it. The translation is, submit yourself to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. And the front side with St. Benedict on it, the translation is, begone, Satan, never tempt me with your vanities. What you offer me is evil. Drink the poison yourself. So you can get these smaller and wear them as a medallion. You can get them a little bit larger and keep them in your pocket. St. Benedict, as everyone knows, is the patron saint of exorcists. So that is my answer today. Try to get a good St. Benedict wall crucifix. And if you don't get it from the Vatican, go to your nearby church, make an appointment for the priest or the bishop there to lay hands on it and put a special blessing on it for you before you hang it on your wall in your home. And God bless you, Karen, for the question. All right, guys. Welcome. This is Reverend Sean Whittington's Paranormal Ministry. I'm your host with the ghost, Reverend Sean, the Rev. Welcome to my haunted house. And a couple of things real quick here. Your one-stop for everything you want to know about me, if you're interested, would be my website, ghostbegone.biz. The ministry right here in Las Vegas, Nevada. My wife Sharon and I founded it over almost 20 years ago. She is an ordained Stephen minister through the Lutheran faith. I am a baptized Catholic, but I am an ordained exorcist through a Christian university and the American Association of Exorcists. If you go to the website to visit, keep in mind that my wife Sharon and I do not charge for our ministry work. So if you notice the button and you're able to do so, send in a small donation. I promise you it will be appreciated from the bottom of our hearts, and we will put it to good use, I assure you. There's a couple of pages there I'd like you to visit if you're at the website. Spiritual advisor page. In addition to being an ordained exorcist, I am also a certified spiritual advisor, intuitive coach, listener. And if you have issues of a spiritual nature not attached to the paranormal and you'd like to make an appointment with me to talk, you can do that there on that page. You'll notice a page called the WSE course/book. I am the founder of the Worldwide Society of Exorcists. I offer a 12-week online college-level course, Introduction to Spiritual Warfare, through the WSE. If you're interested in attending that course and enrolling in that course, you can enroll in it there at the ghostbegone.biz website. And keep in mind that it is college level, so all my graduates get a stunning diploma along with some wonderful, blessed parting gifts that you can only get from yours truly, the Rev. You'll also notice my book is there, God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry, my new haunted autobiography. I quote, the scariest book I ever published. Annette Munich, owner and publisher of Stellium Books, my publisher. It takes something scary sometimes, brothers and sisters, to fight something even scarier. Part of the proceeds of every sale of every copy of my book goes to support stjude.org, St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, Nevada, and that's a beautiful thing. If you've already purchased my book, you're a part of that support group. So God bless you. Quick announcement here. My show is now a joint production between Paranormal Nation Radio and WO Entertainment. My main producer is Carl Albertson. He's the one behind the scenes right now making this all happen. But I am honored to also be a part of WO Entertainment. If you get a chance, you can check out their Facebook page too. They're all about the vets, and that's me in a nutshell. Preventing vet suicide and helping vets with bad PTSD get the help that they need. They're doing some wonderful things there at WO, so I'm glad to be aboard with them also. Carl will be manning the chat. We're all friends here, brothers and sisters. Jump into the chat, make some friends. You can put all your comments in there. You can talk to one another. You can send me a comment. You can ask a question for me or my guest. Carl will try to get the questions up on the screen for me as soon as he can. And as soon as I notice them, I'll try to get to them as soon as I can. Alrighty? Well, guys, I know why you're all here. She's back by extreme popular demand. You guys asked for her, and it's my job to deliver. She's a wonderful, person that we all cherish having in the paranormal community. She's a one-of-a-kind, and she's an author. She's an elite paranormal investigator, parahunter, you name it. She founded www.theparanormalmd.com. That is also, she's known worldwide as the Paranormal MD. Brothers and sisters, welcome to the show, the one and only Mary Marshall. Mary, are you there?
I am. Hello.
How are you?
I am good. I have to confess that, well, one, thank you for that wonderful introduction. And I swear, I'm just going to start calling you up for daily affirmations. But you know what I did? I did a knucklehead thing, Sean. And for people at home, you're backstage while the show is running. I thought I was backstage, but I kind of failed to hit that last button. So I was actually sitting there like, and waiting and waiting,
Was
and then
my
all of a
was my
sudden I
did my message help? Where are you?
no, it didn't because I
Oh,
actually I didn't look at my phone, and then I all of a sudden I just said, wait a minute. And here's the stupid thing, or well, it is stupid. I used this software myself when I did this temporary like podcast thing during the beginning of COVID. So I should have known better. But anyway, so I apologize for making you worry because I didn't come in until like the
you know,
last minute.
I learned a long time ago. I still don't always achieve that, but I try to not sweat the small stuff. And Carl and I have already discussed it. You never know. This is live, so you never know what may happen to a guest and why they may or may not show. So many things can happen, and we have an agreement that I'm just going to go ahead and start the show, do my opening, and when it comes time, he'll send me a message that I either have Mary or I don't have Mary. And if I get to the part where I would normally introduce you and we didn't have you yet, I would see that message. And then I just, whether Carl likes it or not, I pull him in to the
Right.
show and we just talk. You know, we'll figure out what we want to talk about, try to make it interesting, tell the people this is your opportunity to jump in here and beat up on Carl and I and ask us anything you want. And we'll talk for till we get bored, and sometimes that show would probably not be an hour long. We'd cut the show a little earlier, but those things happen. But I'm glad he got a hold of you. And yeah, not for me, but for your fans and followers, because you are backed by extreme popular demand. So those would have been the people mad at me, and I would have been trying to convince them that I didn't do anything to Mary. I hope she's okay, but God bless you. I love you. You look so pretty tonight. I'm glad you're here. Um, Look, I still have my notes from your last show because I only got through like 5 questions, and so I'm going to start right where we left off. Actually, I just lied to you. I am going to start with a new question because I just got this article and I find it very interesting, and I want to know what the Paranormal MD thinks about it. It's an
Okay.
article published by Catholic Dr. Peter Kreeft. He is a professor of philosophy at Boston College, and his new article is that there are 3 types of ghosts now, which, many in my field think there's just demons and angels and that's it. If
Right.
you meet a ghost, you're haunted by a ghost, whatever, it's a demon tricking you. So he calls them 3 categories: ghosts from hell, and he calls those the ones that usually show up when you're doing seances or Ouija board or going into dark places with a bad history where some of them might be hanging around and trying to conjure them, like a paranormal investigator. There's ghosts from purgatory and ghosts from heaven. So I was going to take them category by category and get your take on them. Now, the ghosts from hell, malicious and deceptive spirits, Kreeft explains. And since they are deceptive, they hardly ever appear malicious. They are probably the ones who respond to conjurings and seances. They probably come from hell. Even the chance of that happening should be sufficient enough to terrify anyone away from temptation to necromancy.
Yeah. Um, you know what? That's actually not a bad way to categorize. The only thing I think that people would have a problem with is that, you know, ghosts are not necessarily religiously, they're secular, meaning like by identifying it by heaven or heaven, hell, and purgatory, you're being very exclusive to a religion versus Christianity, because not all Christians believe in purgatory. So, but I will, in addressing that first category, one of the things that I started adding in and talking to people about had to do with talking about types of ghosts. We say intelligent, we say residual, and we kind of left it at that. I added in a category as well, which would be really close to what you're talking about with that. in that we talk about demons, but we don't talk about demonically possessed human ghosts.
Oh.
And right. And here's the thing: everybody goes, "Oh, well, that's that sounds crazy," but at face value. But here's the thing, and this more than than anybody, is when as humans, as a person, when a person gets possessed, it is their soul, their core, energy that is being possessed. The body gets controlled, but the soul is what's possessed, and that's the energy that they're after. Now, when a person dies, which very well could, we've had cases that people, their bodies have died from being possessed. My concern about that is that they're still possessed. We don't, there are, it would have to be obviously a case by case to see when things took place and how it happened. But it also explains the types of entities that have this kind of, they're beyond just, the nasty guy, but you go back into the life. If you think of somebody like a Jeffrey Dahmer or, oh my goodness, Helter Skelter guy, I can't think of it, Charles Manson, or any really, Hitler for that matter, somebody that you're just trying to think, somebody really bad and type of killer mentality, it's entirely possible that they were already during their lifetime suffering some type of, at the very least, an oppression, and possibly a possession. So they again, when they die, who are these maniacal, very evil people we think of as evil people? Who are they most likely to be buddying up with, so to say, on the other side?
Yeah.
So once they pass over, they're still going to pull their strength and possibly shift their alliance to the evil, to the demon, to the demonic and devil side of things. So now when they're functioning, they're also now have a little more strength and a little more power, if you will, in our dimension, because they're not working by themselves like most of the other types of human ghosts in there.
Yeah.
So that they may have more power to hurt people, to even temporarily, and I hate using that word like, because I don't want to, but possess a person, meaning in that they can affect them, their emotions. I've experienced it, and you've heard stories of investigators or people being out there, and all of a sudden they become angry, and they're like, I don't even know why I'm feeling this way. But you start acting out because you're taking on the emotions and the feelings of what's being put to you, and from that other ghost. So in addressing that, I think that it's not a bad way to categorize, because I think it does address then why certain entities seem to have more strength to do certain things than your run-of-the-mill, grandma ghost per se, and also explain what happens to these possessed souls when they get to the other side. They're not released. If they died and they succumbed to that possession, it is entirely possible, if it was not released before that point of death, that soul could still be under that possession for eternity now in something that some would describe as hell.
And in the spirit world, that soul, that possessed soul, that, for lack of a better term, I'm thinking it has been captured by the demonic, it kind of morphs into its own evil, malevolent entity.
Right. And again,
Very
it's not, and you're working now with both human energy and demonic energy, which ups the ante of what you're dealing with and how well you're going to be able to push back against that energy, to protect and so on, those types of things. And the ones where, people are more likely to get pushed downstairs to where they're really getting their life threatened versus just getting scratched even. Um, yeah. So, I mean, it's those kind of things.
Have you heard of this? Just came out, I want to say, people in my field started throwing this term around, and it's just as controversial as ghosts. Just as many people don't believe that there are ghosts in my field. Don't believe this happens also, but I'm a big believer in ghosts. I'll go ahead and say that, but I'm on the fence with this next term, and they call it complete integration. And when you were talking about this soul being completely possessed, and if that body dies, it reminded me of complete integration. And what that is believed to be is that the invading unclean spirit has been in that vessel for so long that it has suppressed and ultimately finally pushed that soul out of there and completely taken over. And now you have a living, breathing, walking, talking demon in somebody's body. And some in my field say no, because the evil, these entities are just so evil, the body would decay and couldn't hold up under those circumstances. But then you see, and you mentioned a couple of the names, you see people like Dahmer, Charles Manson, Hitler, the guy that opened up on the concert from the Mandalay Bay here, killing all those concert goers with a high-powered machine gun. You see these people do some of the most god-awful things with no rhyme nor reason. Sure, there is some mental illness involved, which I'm also a big raise my hand. I'm in on a lot of people that are clinically diagnosed with mental disorder can also still be demonically possessed or obsessed or oppressed. So what do you feel when I throw the whole idea of complete integration at you?
I think that you can do that temporarily. I don't think you could I kind of tend to agree. I don't think that the energy force could sustain itself for a typical lifetime, if you will. I think that it's almost sort of like Annalise, with the possession, and she's down to 79 pounds, and she's not eating, and she's not, because these are not things that they're thinking about is keeping life, keeping consciousness. I will say though, I'm not really sure. I'm not 100% convinced on the fact though of them saying that they can push the other soul out. I think it's trapped. I think it's still, I am a believer that it's still, this person's soul is still in there, but it's almost like a prison of like when someone's in a coma.
Yeah.
And there's just this often emptiness they're not hearing or see, kind of thing. But
I would love to think that would be the case, because how they're already literally going through hell.
Right.
And if they are able to be in there and experience what this demon is making them go through, and their family go through, would be, and not be able to do anything about it, would be horrifying. But then you hear the stories of the soul reaching out for help. I mean, like in The Exorcist, and that was taken, even though it was all changed up, that was taken from a true story.
Right.
And in the true story, the boy carved "help me" on the inside of the stomach lining, the wall of his stomach, which protruded out backwards on the stomach, and they were able to figure out what it meant.
Right.
So yeah, that's, oh my God,
we don't
how horrifying
know.
is that? Yeah.
A lot of times we don't know what the person is going through, because if you compare it to just the human body in itself, taking the coma thing, we know to a certain degree that people can still hear you to a certain point, because then there is almost a brain dead type of situation. So I think that type of possession, I find it really hard to believe that they can completely push out another soul and take over the body and sustain that for a long period of time. I think that's why you often see the living person, I want to say physically decaying, but they are. The vessel is either being starved or injured or bleeding or bruising or, all these things that pop up that may not just be the demonic showing its muscle per se, but it's just this natural, every time they use a force of energy, it's creating more stress on the physical body. Our bodies weren't made for that, type of thing. So it's kind of a, I don't really know, but I really do firmly believe though, that is something we have to look at when you're dealing with ghosts in the paranormal field is, are you dealing with a true demon, straight up demon, or are you dealing with a demonically possessed human entity? That may not be able to you just some of these cases of these really nasty people, and then the strength that they would have more than your norm per se.
Well, there's a lot of guys that, I talk a lot, I talk about so much stuff. I do get a lot of people reaching out to me afterwards saying, this could never happen, that could never happen. Be careful what you say. I've seen and experienced so many things that prior to that was something that you weren't supposed to be able to see or experience, that now it's just every time you go into these cases, it's like a when in Rome. You just, you go by the basics, you know what you're trained to do, and you do what you got to do. It's like hypnotism. Some people thought for a while, well, you get a holy person in there that is also a skilled hypnotist. And when these demon has fully manifested itself in the body of the possessed person, you hypnotize the demon. Then you're talk to the other person to use that opportunity to fight back and come back through. And at the same time, you use the hypnosis to get into the demon's mind and try to get things like the name, who sent you, what mission are you on, why did you do this to this child? And then I get so many people that get really upset at me when I even think about that being a possibility, because they're like the demon, older than time, fallen angels, too smart, too powerful. That would never work on them. But there's so many
levels.
Yeah, absolutely. You and I, every time you and I get into these discussions, you always finish what I'm going to say. I know, I love that. It's like you and I get on, we're right there.
Yeah.
And that's why I love talking to you. But you're absolutely right. Oh my gosh. Let me go on to the next stage here and get off the before I lose the whole audience, get off the real creepy stuff. I don't anymore. I mean, I'm guilty of going to many seances, using a Ouija board many times, but for the last time I used it, and I do believe it allowed something into the home, and that had real bad results. And I was a Ghostbuster for so long. Yeah, I went into many an old building doing the conjuring thing. I don't do that anymore. I don't judge people that do it. Just not my thing anymore. But the second part was Ghosts from Purgatory. This is the most familiar kind, the sad ones, the weepy ones. They seem to be working out some unfinished earthly business or suffering some purgatorial purification until released from their earthly business. These ghosts would seem to be the ones who just barely made it to purgatory, who feel a little or no joy yet, and who need to learn many painful lessons about their past lives on earth.
Okay, I would think that those would be the ones that that more generally is known, referred to as earthbound. And again, and that's generally the idea, is that they're earthbound. A lot of times, unfortunately, your suicides are going to be that, because they're working things out, or sudden unexpected murder, death, versus your longer term illnesses. But I really think it's much like they said, if there's something that they feel that they have not, that they're not worthy, or they're not deserving, or their belief system. You know what? And this kind of ties into when I always talk about culture, how important
Yeah.
that is, and understanding it, because just like we do in our lives, we conduct ourselves by a sense, a code, our morals, our values, our religion, our belief system. And so it's, culture, what a group of people know and do. And so understanding that helps you understand the entity. And why is because my belief of what I think is going to happen when I die is going to be very different than what a Buddhist is going to think, or somebody living in Vietnam is going to think, or in I don't know. I'm trying to think of in the Congo or something, where they have a thing of, you don't get buried properly, you're going to land up wandering the earth forever and be an angry ghost and be angry at your family for not burying you properly. Well, if they die, if that were be the case, and this is your belief system while you're living, when you die, it stands to reason that that's exactly what's going to happen, because there is a certain amount that we do have that free will and that free, choices, and a certain amount of responsibility for our own connectedness, whether it be for like somebody like me with God, or somebody else with the universe. So that you know what I'm saying? So that if you die, that those things are going to happen. So I think if somebody dies and they feel that they have not lived up to their potential, or they have hurt somebody, or they haven't figured some things out, they're probably going to be on the other side working that out, and for a while. From an intuitive medium standpoint, I, I think I will be learning till the day I die of evolving, and things change with what I'm learning from that. But one of the things is as an intuitive medium, I have come across that. I had actually a friend of mine that passed away. We weren't close, but we were friends. And he committed suicide. Mm. And he landed up, the first time I saw him and interact with him, he was not in a good state. He was still not in a good state, but I knew he was working it out. It was like he was going to come back when he was working some of it out. And I also felt confident that he not only would he, but many, many people who do pass over, I think that they can quickly work things through and out with the grace of God, and heal, and maybe pass through that level to the next, so that there's more of because I do see it that way, that a lot of times ones that you might consider purgatory will be earthbound. People who are in heaven, they have more of can come and go as they please and interact as they please type of situation.
Well, we do have something for you here on that came in on the screen here. Sarah Martins. Hi, Sarah. Sometimes people end up holding the spirit here, and the spirit can't move on. Not necessarily the spirit's unfinished business. Oh my gosh, that's so right on.
Yeah. They can hold on. Well, because, here that goes into something though that we don't deal with enough, even from the paranormal investigating perspective side of things, is talking about what I was saying, our control over things, psychokinesis, having the ability, people always think it's like, oh, you're going to start a fire, or, move objects and things like that. But it's also just the power of our own observation, and just kind of how the universe works, of pulling things into your reality, again, to what you are thinking or believing. So when you have something, like what the question just was, Can he pop that back up? Carl, if Carl can pop that back up, because there's something she said at the end of that. I don't know if he's able to do that, so I could see it.
If he's not able to, if from what I got from it is she's absolutely right. It's like when my parents passed, I was so upset about it. My sisters constantly said, "Do not conjure them. Do not conjure them. They're going to be around. They're going to come and visit you when they feel it's right, when you're ready for it, if there's a necessity for that, but don't conjure them because that's not allowing them to rest in peace."
Right. I do see it. You know what? And what it was is when she's saying people holding, people end up holding the spirit here and they can't move on. That can also, I've actually had a case where that happened where they were all entities though. In that, and it was a choice on their part. You're right. If they're feeling that you have a loved one and that loved one doesn't want to let them go, I think ultimately the spirit can see. I kind of disagree with that. I think the spirit can sometimes, depending on the circumstances, can release and go on, but it's not going to, because if you're seeing somebody that you loved and they want you there and they're feeling sadness, and that you're just going to keep staying right there for them. Once they can let you go and say, okay, I'm going to be fine, I don't need you anymore, and let goodbye, that's a release to them. But I think ultimately the spirit still has choice. It has a choice. I mean, I don't think that the human can hold it there.
Well,
So it can't go.
I took my sister's advice. I try not to conjure the folks. My mom reaches out to me through psychics all the time. Psychics will contact me and go, "You're, hate to bug you, but your mom just reached out to me and
Right.
tells me this." And my dad comes to me in dreams, actually, which is interesting. But let me go on to the third one here. This is a nice one. This is a nice one to think of. And maybe you and I will both be fans of Dr. Peter Kreeft after this. Lastly, Ghosts from Heaven. They are the bright, happy spirits of dead friends and family, especially spouses, who appear unbidden at God's will, not ours, with messages of hope and love. They seem to come from heaven, unlike the purgatorial ghosts who come back primarily of their own sakes. These bright spirits come back for the sake of us, the living, to tell us all is well. That's beautiful.
Mm. It is. It is. And I think those generally, right, are going to be the more positive, comments that, or not comments, positive influences to us in our lives. I do want to mention, just though, real quick, when we were talking about people being held, again, they're being held by the person. I had a case in which, 4 years, got to know the family. I know this sounds weird, but the family there, who was all haunting. And then after a few years in, started to get an EVP that of a female asking for help. Long story short is that I had my team back then and I said, you know what, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to move her along. I knew who it was, Elise, and move her along. But every fiber of my being is telling me that her whole deceased family is there, that we've been communicating with. They're going to leave. They're only there because she can't leave. And again, long story short, that's exactly what happened. And I went back maybe at least three, possibly four, I can't remember now, but times afterwards to investigate. This place you could walk into, and in an hour you'd have 20 EVPs. Silence every single time after that. That was the only way for them to really, really let me know, you did your job. You helped her. She's with us now. Thank you, kind of thing. And they no longer. Now, could the rest of that family still, because I think there was a passing over into the light for them, communicate? I think that they could have, but they were all there because she was earthbound. Once she was released, So in a sense, it's the same thing, but it happened all on the other side. They were
Wow.
there for the family member. Um, so yeah, I did just want to bring that up because that's kind of a side track of that.
Well, we have Nardia Carr. Hi, Nardia.
Hi,
And
Nadia.
she says, I've had a young boy come to me a few years ago that passed in an asylum almost 2 years ago. He was asking me why his mummy wasn't there when he passed. I did some research and found out that why I've been back and communicated with him and told him. He's at peace now, but we still communicate. And that's another beautiful story. He passed almost 200 years.
Wow.
Wow. Holy cow.
Wow, 200
Wow.
years ago. And that's the thing is a lot of these asylums, these cases, people are um, that are probably, they probably didn't even have a diagnosis back then, but now might be diagnosed with like schizophrenia or something like that. And they really might be under partial possessions, that's why. It was really interesting fairly recently, about a month ago, I was contacted and started working and was so glad to see this, by the way, is she was a licensed psychotherapist, blah, 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 other whatever degrees in there. And she was actually approaching me paranormal wise.
Hmm.
And she says, she had some clients and there were some things going on with them. And she said, I try to incorporate like being a little more holistic, this and that, and everything and spirituality and things into her standard practice. And I thought it was great what she was doing. I would love to work with her more to almost kind of like a criteria. This is where the people are, and these are things that I can identify that could be what we would know as psychological issues. But she really did feel like they were under psychic attack of some kind. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting coming from someone in the professional field. But I liked hearing that because we had a long talk and I was making suggestions of things that she could do with them. And ultimately, I even identified, maybe not for the first time, but identified that things that I was telling her, even if I was completely wrong and I'm insane and you're insane, we're all insane talking about, ghosts and psychic attacks and curses or any of that kind of stuff, ghosts, is that they empower the person. They were meant to give the person the idea, and if they believe that it is effective, and the end result is good and the same, then you've done your job. But I thought it was really interesting that she was incorporating into her practice things dealing with ghosts and psychic attacks and, even demonic type things if necessary. I'd like to see that happen more. On the flip side, I think that those like yourself or those who do it, you have to go through a criteria in a sense, do you not, when you're doing right for the exorcism and demon, and see what does it, what check mark, boxes are check marked on it. So it would be really interesting to see, from the flip side of that. I think people need that help, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Absolutely. Well, this is what I'm going to do. This has been a topic that I've wanted to bring up for a couple of weeks. And in honor of me now being a part of WO Entertainment, they're all about the vets. I want to talk about PTSD,
Mhm.
not only how a vet can suffer with that his whole life, but it can lead to things, God forbid, like suicide. My father, who was a 25-year retired Master Chief, served in World War II, Korea, Purple Heart recipient, naval intelligence, the horrors he must have saw, but he didn't develop the PTSD till 70s, 80s, in his 90s, we got to a point where we couldn't have procedures almost and put him under sedation because he would come out. One time he was in a dentist office and thought he was on a sinking ship and there was dead bodies all around and the
Oh,
Japanese were attacking. One time he came out of sedation and thought that he was in a POW camp and was asking me to break him out, you know. So, um, but flip side of that coin, it connected to the paranormal. He sent a young man on a sinking ship once up to the radio shack to grab something just before they jumped in the water. And as soon as the young man got into the shack, a kamikaze pilot came through, crashed into the radio shack, taking out that whole level of the ship, and the young man died. My father never forgave himself for sending that young guy up there. And then he also had a good friend that he grew up with who went into the Marines. They were both in the Philippines when Pearl Harbor was bombed, and his friend had a grenade accident and blew his legs off, and he was in a hospital bed. Well, they knew the Japanese was going to invade the Philippines next, right after Pearl Harbor, so all military personnel was ordered off the island, but you couldn't get on a ship unless you could walk on. So basically, he had to say goodbye to his friend, and they knew this was the last time I'm going to see you because he can't get on the ship. But I'm feeding my dad one day at his home, and he waves me over. I go, "What, Dad? You okay?" He goes, "That young man that I sent to his death was just standing here talking to me." I go, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, he just wanted me to know that it wasn't my fault, that I've held on
oh,
that guilt for too long, and that he's well and he's surrounded by love and light and his family, and that he can't wait to see my dad again one day." So that meant a lot to my dad, and I believe him that he saw that. And then he was napping in his chair one day, and I heard him wake up and talking to somebody. And then I looked over, "Dad, you okay?" Waves me over again. I go, "What's going on?" He goes, "I just saw Troy." Troy was the guy, his childhood buddy that he had to say goodbye to. I woke up from my nap and he's bent over with his face about 2 inches from my face with a big smile on his face. And we just chatted a little bit. And he
oh.
wanted me to know that he was okay and he couldn't wait to see me again one day. So, how are you with that whole? And I commonly refer to my patients that I've either taken authority over an exorcism and delivered them from that, or even who just have had infestation or oppression by the demonic in their life, they always hold on to that no matter what the outcome is. And I call it post demonic stress disorder because it's always with them. But that's so much like PTSD. And I believe paranormal. I've been recently interviewing vets from Vietnam who saw Bigfoot there and UFOs.
Oh, that's
I,
awesome.
I tell them, "How high were you?" They go, "Listen, I smoked a little pot on occasion, drank a lot of beer, but when we were out in the field, these are special forces guys.
Right.
No, we didn't get high." And I believe them, and I believe they did see these things. What do you think when I tell you these stories? And we got plenty. We got about 10, 11 minutes left. I I I get blown away when I talk to vets who experience, who I know are having issues fighting the urges of suicide, PTSD, on meds, seeing psychiatrists or psychologists,
Right.
can't find a job, get a job, they can't hold a job. Oh my God, it's just, it's depressing. But then I talk to some of them that have true life paranormal issues also along with that and have seen some phenomenal things while serving our country.
Yeah. I mean, I can't, I mean, for something like that, which, you know what, that you're talking about that is that there should be a book. You know what? It's like really someone should sit and research this and reach out to, all military vets and get their stories because I think we would be really surprised. I mean, you kind of think of it from the UFO side. Look at where we're at now with so many military people coming out, not just governmental, but even, still in there that are saying, yeah, we're seeing things that they're not supposed to be there, kind of thing. So I would imagine with other types of things that they would have that happen as well. As far as the PTSD, that is something that, again, can be complicated by the supernatural. Because you're already taking somebody who's probably in a much more weakened state than we realize, or they want you to realize, because that's part of often the training is you're fine, kind of a thing. And then certain things are going to trigger that. And I would imagine that the supernatural plays more a factor into that than, again, we realize. Just like any other person or other patients that might be experiencing something. I'm looking at Justin, as y'all must read minds. I've thought about, you should, Justin.
You should. And we want a piece of the action.
Yeah, because that's exactly when you're talking about it. I'm like, that would be fascinating book to read.
Yeah, absolutely. In my book, I touched barely on some of the things that my dad went through. And even myself, being in the Navy for a little while, we would go out on these West Packs 4, 6, 8 months at a time, not even going to any of the ports, just floating around in the middle of the ocean, doing God knows what. Yeah. And I'm in the radio shack. When you go out the radio shack, you walk up a ladder, there's the signalman shack, and then there's one more ladder, there's the crow's nest. So we're by ourselves up there. Yeah, there was a lot of drinking and getting high going on, but not to the point where at nighttime especially, you run silent, you run dark, so there's no lights. So you can't really be on a ship at night and high. But I would see some crazy, crazy things out there in the middle of the ocean. And when you try to talk to somebody about it, you get told to shut the hell up. And that's the last time we want to hear you even bring this type of stuff up. And there'd be some guys, oh my gosh, I'm going to get hate mail. There'd be some guys that just wouldn't let it go. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get hate mail for this, but something's telling me to say it anyway. Guys would just not show up for roll call the next day. And they would determine sometime they must have fell out overboard sometime during the night while out at sea. You wouldn't know if somebody threw them over, if they got high and fell over. I mean, it was really scary stuff. You couldn't talk about that stuff. So, and I saw many a ghost, even on the guided missile cruiser I was on, and we were part of the, it was the USS Halsey, and we were part of the Kitty Hawk group. And I would see guys that I thought were right freaking there in the, right in the hallway with me that I have to move out of the way for, walk by me, but then walk through me too, and go, whoa. But you couldn't talk to anybody. See, maybe I got a little PTSD and don't know it. I mean, I could be. That's why I like talking to you. And I talk to a friend of mine who's a psychiatrist at least once every couple of months, and a psychologist once every couple of months, because the last thing you need if you're under demonic attack is to have a crazy exorcist show up at your house. So I try to make sure I'm not, but you never know. I could be, I could lose it after this show. That's why I like talking to people like you, because you would call me later and say, Sean, we need to talk.
Yeah, you know what? The thing is though, you're bringing up some really, really good points about all of this stuff, because again, if part of the, the post-traumatic is all of your training. And often I will say this, more training for male or female at this point, and I'll just say military, but and it's changing more each generation, but still age-wise, there's a lot of guys out there that were brought up in a generation that not just the military is telling you that you have to be quiet, suck it up, buttercup. It's you have society saying the same thing. So you come back, you don't talk about things just keep shoving. And the whole attitude is as a person of you, whatever comes at you, you can take it. You can take it on. And we're just ultimately, souls, and we're human, and we can't, can only do so much. And everybody's at different place of what. So I think some people defer to when they're much older, because what happens when you get to be 80 years old, you have a whole lot of time to sit and do nothing but think. Where earlier in life, you can still kind of put it off by the details of life. got to get the kids to school, got to do this, got to do, got to get to the job, got to fix the roof, so you're kind of can still do some stuffing by not paying attention and defer it. So it kind of makes sense to me that sometimes the older person if they didn't have seemingly outward PTSD, even if they did have it.
I remember the time my dad thought he was we were in a hospital and they had to put him in a special bed that had like netting around it, and it was reinforced netting that he couldn't climb out of the bed because he was trying to escape. And there was a window right next to him, and he could see the backyard of the hospital, then an alley and a fence.
Right.
And he said, "We're going to bust out of here, and I need your help. In 1 hour, I need you by the fence in the car with the engine running. I already figured out how I'm going to cut out of the net and get out the window, and I'm going to be running. So just open the door and keep the car running." Part of me almost wanted to. There was a fire in his eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time. 90 years old, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to see if this son of a can pull this off. But the other half of me is like, don't encourage this. Just somehow I was able to convince him that he was in a hospital for his own good for just a couple of days, and that he was coming home. But I was tempted.
I know, but you're like, yeah.
I was tempted to see can he really pull this off. But I don't want the show to end, and we've got a couple of minutes. Somebody posted something. I believe it was Nardia again. Is that her name, Nadia? I believe she posted something. I wanted to. Oh, there we go, Nardia. I've had a near-death experience. I was on the operating table and did die. Wow. But I watched them working on me to get me back, and I told the doctor exactly what happened and what was said while they were working on me. I've been told I have psychic abilities, but don't promote that. I have it. Before Mary jumps in on this, Nardia, who cares? If you believe you do and you want to share it with people, like you're among family here, share it. No one, I know you're not going to get anybody judging you here. That's for sure.
Right.
And if have people close to you that judge you, then you don't want them around you any longer. Be you. Last week I mentioned this. There comes a little bit of authority with testifying, and if you testify to your beliefs of having psychic abilities because you had a near-death experience, or let's even call it what it is, you died and came back, that's something to share. So don't feel like you can't share it, but that's an incredible story. And I'll let Mary comment on that before I take us out.
I've got just a few seconds here because I can see the time. So I'm going to answer it this way. I did a class once, and part of in this ghost and spirit entities class, because it was several weeks long, we addressed near-death experience. This was a very small, not at the college, it was a small school. 6 students. 5 of the 6 students we discovered at the end, towards the end of this class, when we got into this whole near death, we are now sitting on the floor in a circle because it just happened that way. 5 out of 6 that enrolled in that had near death experiences. That was not a coincidence.
No.
By the end, they were writing each other's numbers and names down because it was somebody else that understood what they had gone through. I'm like, this is not a coincidence. You don't have this many people. So I would say find somebody who can support you in when you do need to talk about it or you want to talk about it, because there's a lot of people out there.
Absolutely. Well, you know what I'm going to say next to you.
I got to get to, you're in Vegas, aren't you?
Yeah, I did get to one question where I said we would continue on here because I started with a new question. So I am going to, after I read the 40 or some odd notes from your followers, when is she coming back? You guys can't leave us hanging again like this. I will throw some dates at you, get you back again for a part 3. But oh my gosh.
And you got to get me out there. I don't know. There's got to be an event or conference or something. I want to meet you and hang out with you in person.
The Purdy's Elite Vegas Paranormal used to have the Las Vegas Paracon out here. They did, I believe, 3 of them, and then they stopped them because it's just so darned hard to pull it off. Yeah. And for some reason, they don't go here. I don't know if it's the paranormal community here in Vegas isn't very
Hmm.
supportive. I mean, everybody thinks it's just Zach Baggins,
Yeah.
Zach Baggins, and uh, there's a much larger paranormal community in Vegas than people realize, but they just don't seem to turn out for the events. But maybe I'll even put one together one day, and or maybe you
Get
and
you
my
this
wife will
way.
put it together. And yeah, we have to hook up in person. If you ever get it to Vegas, yeah, my wife and I will be. Our hearts will be broken if you don't reach out to us. At least meet for a bite to eat or a cup of coffee.
Yeah. I
Go to
would love to.
yeah, work a case together or something. I've got a
Yeah.
ton of them. I can't keep up with them. And if you anytime you popped out here, I'm sure I would have one pending, and maybe we work it together. But I'll reach out to you with some open dates within the next 24, 48 hours, or maybe even later tonight. But God bless you for being here again for another hour on your busy Sunday. I know I love you. I know all your followers and my viewers love you. So thank you very much.
Well, and thank you. You're a blessing to all of us. So just know that you're appreciated as well.
I know some people that would disagree.
And your wife doesn't count. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I know you're
It's
watching the
like,
show
yeah, you don't have to
here, but
live with them.
have dinner ready when the show's over. Could you please? Um, so anyway, God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday evening. Stay safe, and I'll be in touch with you. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank
All right,
you.
Mary. Good night.
Bye. Good night.
Brothers and sisters, oh my gosh, does it get any better than Mary Marshall, the Paranormal MD? Check her Facebook page out. Check her website out. She's got two or three different types of Facebook pages out. She's doing all sorts of wonderful things. A lot of Bigfoot research too. Yeah, I'm going to get her back for nothing but Bigfoot talk. Maybe a panel. Get a couple of other Bigfoot people on here. Reach out to all the Bigfoot people to jump into the chat room and let's do that. I will be back next Sunday with another all new live Reverend Sean Whittington's Paranormal Ministry. My very special guest, you all know her, you all love her, psychic medium Brandy Wells will be here. And if you're not sick of me already, tomorrow night on Vegas Supernatural, I have Rosemary Ringer. And she is a near death experiencer and an author. And her story, it's funny that we talked about it already. Her story of dying and coming back from the dead is unlike anything you've ever heard. So if you're bored tomorrow night and you want to catch me on Vegas Supernatural on KCOR, that's what I'll be doing. Until then, thank you, Carl Albertson and Paranormal Nation Radio. Thank you, WO Entertainment. God bless all the vets. God bless all you that tuned in. I don't have a show without you all, and I mean that from my heart. Have a blessed week. Stop the violence. On that note, good night, Harold. Rest in peace. Good night, Ernie. Good night, Bill. Good night, Dan. God bless you all. See you all next week. Good night, everybody.